District of Conservation is sponsored by the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, better known as CFACT. To learn more about our sponsor, head over to cfact.org. Thanks for listening to the program.
Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
Welcome to District of Conservation. I'm your host, Gabriella Hoffman. This podcast offers a sober examination into all things hunting, fishing, shooting sports, energy, environment, and the public policy surrounding it. And this podcast also specializes in original interviews that you won't hear elsewhere. Here's what I have for you today. This week, I am heading out for a vacation to Europe, Lithuania, where my parents hail from, and I haven't been in 25 years, so I'm going to be soaking it in, trying to be offline as much as I can, but I will document the experience. There is some fishing and mushroom hunting entailed, lots of good food, wild game sampling, of course, that's going to be happening because a lot of the restaurants sell wild game meat dishes. We have an episode today with Luke Hilgemann from International Order of T. Roosevelt talking about how Wildlife for All is attacking the efforts to pass Yes on 2 in Florida, the Right to Hunt and Fish Amendment. So we'll have a nice little discussion there today on the program. Next week, you'll hear a pre-recorded discussion on the debate over affordable housing on public lands. Both the right and the left, the Biden administration and some Republicans, and even in the RNC platform, there's this notion to set aside tracts of federal land to make them available for affordable housing. They're doing this in Nevada. Republicans have a bigger scale proposal. I'm skeptical of both efforts, to be truthful with you all, and I will kind of weigh my thoughts on this issue in that podcast coming out next week. There won't be an episode Labor Day because I'll still be in Europe, and we're going to have a little break to reset before the launch of season 7 of the show. It's been a lovely 6 seasons speaking with you all, bringing on guests, and I cannot wait for the new season where we will continue to do what we do here best, bring you original reporting, commentary, and interviews you will not hear elsewhere. But now we will take it over to Luke Hilgemann to talk about this Wildlife for All, wading into Florida Yes on 2, what they're up to, and some collaborations they have in the mix. Luke, thanks for rejoining the podcast. I know you want my listeners to be aware of a notorious group that has been exposed here on the show. They're now trying to interfere with your efforts, and I'm talking about Wildlife for All, which is a group that's geared towards reimagining state wildlife agencies. So what shenanigans, Luke, are they up to now?
Again, Gabby, these guys just never cease to amaze me. It just seems like the more radical they become, the crazier their ideas get. And so now the latest episode is they're trying to convince people in Florida not to vote for our constitutional amendment, which will forever protect fishing and hunting as the preferred methods to manage wild game in the state of Florida. And this Wildlife for All group came out now this last week at the behest of the coordinator who's running the No to 2 campaign in Florida, and sent out a memo basically saying, hey, you guys don't need this down there. There's no threat to hunting and fishing. There's no ban on the Oregon Initiative anymore. And, you really don't need this. And they literally spell out in their press release that efforts like a constitutional amendment that will forever protect fishing and hunting will make it more difficult for groups like theirs to ban hunting in the future. It literally is exactly what we've been telling people. Like, these threats are real. This radical group is absolutely determined to see this not only happen in Western states, but now they're quoted as saying they want to see this happen in all 50 states. So you can't have it both ways, right? It's either this is part of their agenda, this is what they want to see done, or it's not. And unfortunately, in this instance, here they go again.
What exactly are they taking issue? Because I think this is the first time we've seen them weigh in on a right to hunt and fish amendment. They've criticized them before. And it's funny enough, someone had reached out to me, an acquaintance who doesn't really know our issues very well. And they're like, oh, I found this example about Pittman Robertson from this group. I was like, do not take any information from them. They're purposely misleading and deluding people to say like they're the authority on Pittman Robertson, when in fact you dig deeper, they're trying to advocate for dissolving that and also Dingell Johnson as well. So what in particular do they take issue with the amendment in question?
Consumptive taking of wildlife. That's what it boils down to for them. They are of the opinion that anyone who catches a fish, harvests wild game, and decides to take that fresh, renewable, reliable source of protein back to enjoy with themselves, their family, and their friends, that's like a cardinal sin in their book. And so they're spelling out that if we forever protect fishing and hunting, that's somehow going to make it more difficult for groups like theirs to pass a wildlife management or conservation model that doesn't rely on consumptive use of wildlife.
And it's funny, this group in particular has not proposed how they're going to replace PR and Dingell Johnson monies. They want to take us out of the equation. That's their long stated goal, even though they're a fairly nascent group. And so they say that it's not necessary. And I wonder, have they given any allusions as to what do they want to replace Pittman Robertson and Dingell Johnson amendment money with?
Of course not, because those facts don't match their rhetoric, right? As you and I well know, and so many other hunters, anglers, and conservationists, true conservationists across the country, understand that this is a user pays model, that it's our license fees, it's our taxes that we pay on every round of ammunition we purchase or fishing hook that we buy that goes back to supplement the conservation programs that keep our lakes stocked and the ocean stocked and allows conservation as we know it in America to continue. They don't ever want to answer the question, if you take away hunting and fishing, who's going to pay for these conservation programs?
And that is why removing hunters and anglers from the equation, if they were to succeed with a no onto. But I think you guys are doing well. You, Travis, Mike, and everyone who's been working to firmly get this passed across the line in November. So I think that's why they're panicking. That's why they're, to me, settling in on Florida randomly, because they're panicking that your guys' efforts may prevail. Is that what we are to take away from it? Because why would they jump in if they didn't view your efforts as a threat?
That's exactly it, right? And I think we've made no secret about it. I've talked to your listeners and you in particular, your podcast about this is, look, when we win Florida, we're going to use a blueprint that we've learned there to hopefully replicate that in as many states as we can with the hope of getting to all 50 of them to manage wildlife responsibly and respectably with fishing and hunting as the traditional methods we need to do that. And I think that scares them. They don't have an answer to it, as you like we just discussed. And unfortunately, that seems to be their MO is that, don't worry, we're not really going to target fishing and hunting to be criminal activities in Florida like they're doing in Oregon. Don't worry about that. You guys really don't need this extra layer of protection because we're never going to do that in Florida. You just can't have it both ways. These people can't threaten these things, try to put them on the ballot in Oregon, and then go back and reinstitute it and say, we would never try and do something like that in Florida.
There's also a great debate over the use of consumptive user. Another one of my friends who works in the waterfowl space, Cyrus Baird, often talks about how that term is just so misplaced and misused, and it's not accurate because you're not always consuming wild game or fish when you're hunting and fishing. So a lot of the times you're not catching anything or harvesting anything. And I think it's funny that they have the gall to call us consumptive users in a pejorative way when they themselves are freeloaders. So we're active users. We pay into the model. It's a user pay system, as you alluded to, but they're freeloaders. They don't do anything outside of disrupting the system and disrupting the flow of money that comes in if they're to succeed with chipping away, whether it's stacking the board with, people who have antipathy for hunting and fishing, as we've seen in Colorado, Washington State, where this group has played very well. New Mexico, they have succeeded too in leaving their footprint. So to me, it seems like they balk at the term consumptive user, which I think we should use a different term, find a better word. I like conservation user or active user. I don't necessarily think we have to say that apart from like hunters and anglers, but they're using us as a pejorative when they themselves don't contribute anything positively and they don't promise to. They just want to disrupt the chain of funding that comes from the Department of Interior to the states and then take over and then waste that money on extraneous and even nefarious things which have nothing to do with wildlife. And then I think they want to scream about conservation and then line their coffers. This is what we see with stuff happening federally. Like they're straying from the mission statement at different agencies we have observed and talked about. We're going to see that at the state level where they just disrupt that flow of money. And then those who are at the helm of different, confabs and organizations or boards, they'll take that money for themselves. That's my big worry. That's like the pessimist in me coming out. Like, I think they want to disrupt it, rake the money for themselves, and then just create chaos.
I think you're absolutely spot on, Gabby. And all you have to do is take a look at the 990 of some of the groups that they associate with. Wildlife for All, while they're fairly new in the space, they came up with a really cool name. If you look at who's involved with these organizations, you'll see former executives from groups like the Humane Society of the United States. You'll see people from PETA. You'll see executives from groups like the Animal Legal Defense Fund. And all of these people, while their stated goal is to be about protecting animals, what they're doing is pilfering the members like you just talked about, right? I mean, the executives that are leading the Humane Society of the United States, which, by the way, is $150 million a year nonprofit with its top stated goal to end hunting and fishing in America. These people are doing nothing more than taking rich salaries and trying to end conservation and the traditions that you and I and every outdoorsman and outdoors lady love to participate here in America.
That's what's the scary thing about this group. And I don't think they've really gained national attention outside of like the Outdoor Life article that actually was critical of them. Not outside of that and some other coverage here and there, but they're not really driving things yet, but they seem to be operating behind the scenes and trying to change the narrative quietly and fight these quiet battles that sometimes our people do not fight, not going to the different meetings, not paying attention to statutes, not paying attention to ballot initiatives. I'm really glad to hear that a lot of people are heightened to what's happening in Colorado, because if that statute to ban cougar hunting, mountain lion hunting were to pass, it has downstream effects on every other form of hunting. And I think I had heard correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, but didn't they also, it's a funny coincidence, they stopped doing I think this is the last year Colorado's doing over-the-counter elk. So it just seems like, they're giving preferences to apex predators, which do need management. If you're trying to bolster their numbers and preserve them, you do have to manage them. That's what these Wildlife for All folks and others don't understand. But seeing what's happening in Colorado is very scary right now. But I love that there's a lot of pushback too, even from people you didn't think there would be pushback from.
Yeah, for sure. And that Colorado threat is absolutely real. And, again, it's on the ballot there. And to me, like, it's the polar opposite of what we're trying to do, right? IOTR is in this because we believe that giving the constitutional right to fish and hunt, giving the fishing and hunting a higher protection under the law is a way to push back against some of these radical ideas that we're seeing being pushed at the ballot box by groups like what we see in Colorado. And again, all you have to do is look at the states that have a constitutional right to hunt and fish. States like Colorado do not. And so the organizations that want to end hunting and fishing are going to these states on purpose because it doesn't have the backing of the people. And it's easier for them to go there and try and run these fraudulent policies through without people, standing up and speaking out.
Right. And it's good that I hate that we have to play defense, but this is, I think, how change or slowing the damage that these groups are trying to cause happens. You have to see that you potentially may lose your right to hunt or the ability even to manage certain species in particular. And not so much, you have to be the one to be managing it. I think you're seeing a lot of other types of hunters in Colorado, elk hunters, even non-big game hunters, who are also weighing in and saying, I'm very concerned about the statutory language. It has wide sweeping effects potentially on me. They are very raw from the wolf dictate. They've seen that program falter. I believe even a tribe that was in talks to transport some wolves from Washington state have then canceled that transaction with Colorado, the Ute tribe, I believe, in Utah, Colorado, because there's also a presence of them in Colorado, has said they were not going to accept the wolves, I think, from Washington state. That's what it is. Because they said that they're worried about the predatory behavior of these very aggressive packs of wolves coming in. So even Native Americans, who a lot of these environmentalists have truly exploited because of just, historical problems, and they're trying to, appeal to the tribes, although the tribes, I think, could work with us because they're sportsmen and women too. I think there's more commonality that we don't seek out with them, unfortunately. But even the Native American tribes, the tribal interests, who they like to, exploit for admiring the wolf and maybe misinterpreting their stance on the wolf, they're even alienating them, these anti-hunters as well.
Yeah. And all you have to do is read the initiative that they're pushing. Wildlife for All is pushing again in Oregon. Again, our side, right? The conservation hunting groups. really celebrated the fact that IP3 actually failed because they didn't collect enough signatures. Well, Wildlife for All immediately went back, recertified, and they are collecting signatures right now today to try and do the same crazy thing of criminalizing fishing and hunting and most forms of farming under a new initiative, petition 28. So again, I think that's a key point, is these people are absolutely determined to see this through. They're better at the long game than we are. And again, I think it's a threat that we've got to continue to stamp out, highlight, and point to for people that love to hunt and fish and understand the importance of our conservation system, to understand that this is real. This is not something that's just cooked up. It's not talking points. Like, this is real. And if we take our eye off the ball, they're going to roll these things through, and they're absolutely determined to do that.
They really are determined. And I think that's why people are paying attention more so this election to, let's say, if there are governor races, and they're even looking at the top, where do the two presumptive nominees, there's one already official, President Trump, and Kamala Harris is the presumptive nominee for Democrats. They're also looking at the top of the ticket to see who is representing their interests. But I think even more so paying attention to the governor's races, to be like, oh, I live in a state where there's a race going on and they appoint commissioners. Oh, I need to pay attention to who exactly is genuflecting and gesturing to me that they support my way of life to hunt and fish and do all these other activities. So I think people are starting to become increasingly heightened. But as I spoke to, some other people who were talking about how they're gauging, hunters and gun owners to vote this election, there's still a lot of intrigue about why so many hunters and anglers aren't voting, but maybe they will when they start to recognize that their rights are under attack. Luke, I also want to ask you about some other stuff that IOTR is working on, because I know right now, of course, everyone's in the thick of election 2024. I'm not sure where the right to hunt and fish amendments outside of Florida are currently standing, but kind of looking forward, where are you guys going to be focusing in legislative year 2025? What states are on your radar? And then also talk about what's the latest with your collaboration with the Cabela Family Foundation and the show.
Yeah. So first of all, top priority for us is Florida, right? We've already reached millions of Floridians with our messaging about why fishing and hunting must be forever protected in Florida. We're working with a coalition of over 60 local fishing, hunting, and conservation groups, as well as many environmentalists that are joined our side there, that are concerned about making sure, because they understand that, while they may not fish or hunt, the boat ramp that they like to launch their kayak or canoe from is paid for by dollars that come from anglers and hunters. And so it's been a really kind of, I think, exciting point of what we're seeing in Florida that, again, we hope to replicate in many other states. So the other states that we were working in, South Dakota, Iowa, Ohio, that's kind of like the next tier of the states that we're going to try and push the constitutional right to hunt and fish in. We already have drafts in South Dakota and Ohio, as well as Iowa, that we're working on. There's been outreach from legislators in West Virginia and Missouri as well. So those states are right in the mix as well. So again, I don't think we're going to have a lack of places to try and go to get this done. But of course, we're not taking our eye off the ball, and we're not taking anything for granted in Florida. We know we have to finish the job there because the threshold is 60% to make this a constitutionally protected right to fish and hunt. And we intend to win that fight.
And then also Dan Cabela's show, The Hard Truths of Conservation, is that returning again soon? I think I saw him post about some new episodes dropping, especially coinciding with your guys' partnership with them.
Yep. Yeah. So Dan Cabela and what he has done to be, I think, one of the best messengers about what hunting, fishing, and conservation really means. And his show, Hard Truth of Conservation, I think, is the tip of the spear in getting that messaging out to people, broad audiences of people across not only America, but the globe, who may or may not fish. His show is broadcast on the History Channel. It's coming back. We're excited at IOTR to be their premier sponsor of the Hard Truths of Conservation. So basically locking arms in tandem with the Cabela Family Foundation under Dan's leadership to be able to go out and tell the true story and set the narrative straight about hunting and fishing being the truest forms of conservation, not only here in America, but globally as well. So we're super excited about that partnership. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much, but we have a a bison project that we're working on with them right now that will be part of the new season. And we're very excited about what we were able to work together on up in Alaska in a remote area off the coast of Kodiak Island. And it's exciting stuff. The partnerships, you talked about it earlier with the native tribes, like this is at the core of what conservation is. And it's about food security for the tribe that we were working with up there in particular. And I can't wait for Dan to be able to make that announcement and bring that message and that show for the masses. And again, he's reaching millions of people who may or may not hunt or fish, and doing it in a way that I think really steers them back our way to understand the importance of why these are the truest tools for conservation in America.
It's done very artfully. It's tasteful. It's beautifully cinematically done too. Like, I love watching the program, and before you guys established it, I was watching it, I think since its inception too. And it is one of the best, I would say, avenues that hunting has been conveyed as a conservation tool, and people have received it very positively. So the Cabela Family Foundation, Mr. Cabela himself, know what they're doing, and it's so exciting you guys are working with them. I have seen the pictures and I don't know any details, so I want to encourage everyone to watch whenever that drops on the History Channel. I know Dan Cabela will post those details. I have no doubt when it's public for you all, you'll share, the time premiere of the next upcoming season, and we'll be sure to include that whenever, and I'll talk about it in the future if we don't have you back on sooner before the November election, or if we don't have you guys on for another amendment, Yes on 2 update, but we'll get those details sorted out. I'll blast it on social media too whenever it becomes available. But Luke, as always, could you remind my listeners where to connect with IOTR's efforts, Florida Yes on 2 for the Florida listeners, and any other appropriate links?
Yeah, so our website is www.iotr.org. And again, we have an action arm, T Roosevelt Action, which is traaction.org. And again, we are out there every day in the arena fighting to protect and preserve hunting and fishing rights that have been passed down for generations here in America. Right now, really kind of a cool thing. And if you haven't checked it out yet, Gabby, I'd encourage you and your listeners to do so. We have a welcome message right now from Teddy Roosevelt himself, the man, the myth, the legend, actually portrayed through a gentleman named Joe Wiegand, who has brought Teddy Roosevelt to life for millions of Americans. He has actually partnered up with us now and is working with us to bring the messaging and the narrative about why our mission is part of what Teddy Roosevelt's legacy is for this generation and many to come.
That's very exciting. I will be sure to look out for that too. Luke, always a pleasure. I'm so glad we connected at ICAST finally in person. That was a fun dinner that all of us had. And I hope you guys had a great show, and keep up the good work, and let us know how we could support Yes on 2. Outreach efforts. Obviously, I can't directly electioneer, but I like the amendment myself. I can't vote for it, but I'm telling listeners to support it because it is not controversial. It makes sense, and it would be good for our friends in Florida to become state number 24 that has the right to hunt and fish.
Amen. Thank you so much, Gabby.
If you enjoyed this installment of District of Conservation, I would love to know your feedback. Send it my way. Please be sure to leave us reviews on Apple, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are played, and also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to never miss a beat nor a guest announcement. Thanks so much for listening to District of Conservation. I hope you have a wonderful day, and please share the podcast to those who may be interested in learning more about these critical natural resources, environment, energy issues.